It's just really money. I ask them a lot of the times, what do you value more, time or money? If
Mm,
they say time, okay, well, here's my cash offer, 3 to 4 weeks, we can get it, if you're okay with waiting 7 to 8 weeks, here's my Novation offer. It's always more, it's typically 10% more than the cash offer. And if they're not in
okay.
a rush, they're not in a time crunch, they typically lean that way.
Welcome to another episode of Fund Flip Repeat. We are your Oklahoma and Texas private money lenders. And today we have Tyler Overholt with us. And Tyler is a newer investor, but he is out there crushing it, doing deals, finding deals, and doing deals in a creative way. And that's what we want to focus on today's episode is some of the creative aspects that Tyler's actually doing these deals. And he's doing some stuff on the traditional side and non-traditional side. So he's looking at different angles. And we know as the market changes in different cycles, that is super, super important. So that's been impressive to watch, Tyler, as we've got to know each other. So specifically, we want to drill down on this episode about novations. I think novations is something that has kind of picked up steam and picked up popularity. It's a strategy that has been around for a while, but it's also something that has been trending a lot more lately. So wanted to talk a little bit about that specifically with you. But yeah, welcome to the show, Tyler, and thanks so much for coming on. Really, really appreciate it now.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. And it's funny, when I first started, novations were kind of a gray area, but now, like you said, it's kind of picked up and a lot of people are doing them. So
Yeah. So
excited to talk about it.
what pulled you into novations, and how did that even get on your radar to begin with? Right, because that is like it's a pretty creative avenue. So you've got your wholesale, you got your flips, you got your burrs, you got your whatevers. But what kind of drew you to novations?
You know, I think I watched a lot of bigger like wholesalers and there was just a strategy they talked about, like on YouTube and stuff. And so I just kind of looked into it and then asked around like who's doing them because some people won't do them and some people do. And then kind of just, learned as I went, really just through asking people, local, how they do 'em, how they structure them and
Yeah.
all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So let's deep dive that. Let's just get into it. So structure, I think, is the most important when it comes to novations. And I think there is a wide range of how you can structure it. But before we get too deep into structure, can you just explain on a very simple way what novation actually is?
Yeah. So the way I look at innovation, it's almost like a partnership between you and the seller. Typically, it's a nicer home that doesn't need, you know, it's not down to the studs like all these other, investment deals.
Okay.
When a lot of times people they don't want to deal with realtors, um, showings. They don't want to deal with that. They're out of state sometimes, and so really, I pitch it as a partnership, it's a way I can get them more money than their typical cash offer that these other investors are giving them. And yeah, it's an agreement between me and the seller. And then I pretty much just take it to the market. And it's a way I can put less than $5,000 typically into the house. And so they are getting a part of that equity that, or that value I'm adding through the retail side of the market.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's right. So you're saying it's like a partnership. So instead of just like buying the house outright, it's a transaction. Basically, hey, I'm going to buy your house. They move out. You do what you want to do to the house. You're saying it's more of like a partnership of saying, hey, let's negotiate an agreed upon price. And then you're going to put some money into it. You're saying you look for houses that might already be like pretty decent. So you might have to put like $5,000 into it to, you know, spiff it up a little bit more, right? And then you're listing it on the MLS with the seller. Is that right? With the
So
homeowner?
it's that part they don't deal with that,
Okay.
it's an agreed upon price. Like we sign a contract, like a regular deal, you sign a contract, but there's, clauses in there that says, I can market it to the MLS. I can, share the address and stuff like that. And they really don't have to deal with any of that. Sometimes it's vacant and that's the best case scenario. You throw a lockbox on and they don't have to deal with anything. It's very hands off for them. rather than fixing it up and, showing it, having to deal with all that stuff. It's very hands off for them.
So you're offering them convenience. And then
Right.
why would they do a novation opposed to, just you buying the house?
It's just really money. I ask them a lot of the times, what do you value more, time or money? If
Mm,
they say time, okay, well, here's my cash offer, 3 to 4 weeks, we can get it, if you're okay with waiting 7 to 8 weeks, here's my Novation offer. It's always more, it's typically 10% more than the cash offer. And if they're not
okay.
in a rush, they're not in a time crunch, they typically lean that way.
Okay. Gotcha. So they'll do the novation. You're offering convenience, but you're also offering, it sounds like, the opportunity to get the max amount for the property if they were going to do it this way. Correct? Okay. Gotcha. 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 That makes sense. So let's break that. Can we break that down as like a simple scenario, maybe like a deal that you have done or currently doing with some like basic numbers? And we can just use like easy round numbers or a deal that you're currently doing. I think that'll be super helpful. We can kind of run through that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So we can talk about one that just closed last week. It was in Moore. Um, I had pitched them cash and Novation. The Novation number was 160,000. And I was looking at this the other day. So this one, I use an agent down there, and before we hadn't even gone on the market yet. We were about to take pictures to list it, and he comes to me and he says, "Hey, I know this out of state investor that,
Mhm.
they need to buy property right now for tax purposes, like 1031 or whatever, Can I show him this before we list it?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And so they ended up buying it. We didn't even have to go on the market. And so that seller got more money for nothing really. They didn't have to wait at all. It was super cool saying like, "Hey," calling the seller and like, "We're actually going to close, a month, 4 to 6 weeks earlier than we expected." And so, that was pretty cool. They were very excited, happy about that. And they got the a little bit more money than everybody else was offering them.
Okay. Awesome. So how many of these deals have you done now?
Novations, I haven't done too many. I've got one on the market right now, and then I've started to pitch them more just because, like you said, this market right now, people they want the most amount of money really, and so it's hard. Pitching cash has been harder for me, so I've kind of had to turn this way. So I'm hoping to have 3 more on the market within the next month,
Got it.
based on what
Got
I've
it.
got right now.
Okay.
I've had to
Okay.
lean towards this strategy a lot recently.
And how are you finding the deals?
So I run Google ads. That's my way of marketing,
Pay
you
per
know,
click?
pay per click. Yeah.
Pay per click. Okay. And you do
And
that
so
in-house or you outsource that or?
I have a guy who runs it for me, but I mean, I'm the only
Okay.
one that gets the leads. And so, yeah, once I get the lead, I kind of just tell them both, I can do this and I can do that and really like set that out for them.
Yeah.
Tyler, I
I
wanted to
think
ask
it's
you.
super.
Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah. Just real quick and then I'll let you
Yeah, yeah,
take it there, Ryan.
great.
But I think it's super powerful. And I want to highlight this because I don't want to skip over this because I think it's super, super powerful what you're saying, Tyler. And you are newer ultimately to the game traditionally, right? But you're starting out with like I said in the beginning, doing deals, slinging deals. You're crushing it, right? That's true, and you're doing stuff on the creative side. But what you're saying that I want to highlight is you're going into these appointments, you're going to the sellers, and you're providing options. When you can be the one to go into these appointments and provide multiple options, that is going to make you the most successful because it's not a one size fits all. And you said this, right? What's most important to you? Speed, convenience, time, or money. And then you have a strategy in place for them that will fit their needs. And that is super, super important. So, too many times that what I've seen, it's not a blanket statement, but what I've seen is like someone going into an appointment and saying, "Hey, here's my cash offer." And they're like, "Oh, I can't do that." And they say, "Okay, on to the next lead." So what you're doing already intuitively, and you're picking up on this immediately, is going into this appointment. If they're saying, "No, I can't do that," and say, "Well, how about this Novation thing?" And the cool thing is you just explain this story of this deal that you did, and the homeowners are like super excited and they're happy. That honestly, it was a blessing to them, right? And you met them exactly where they needed to be. So Really, really cool, man. Love to hear that. You're providing options. More and better options is, internally here at Fixed Lending, we define that as like wealth in general. It's just more and better options. So I love that, man. But sorry, man, Ryan, didn't mean to cut you off. So, but yeah, I wanted to highlight that.
No. I think that's awesome, and that's kind of where my mind was going to. Tyler, was what Joel said, but also you used the same word on multiple occasions, and it's a word that I think is really important for us to, even from the perspective of lending money out to the investors that we do deals with, and that was the word partnership. And so, if you can really enter into that relationship with that mindset, I think it changes the dynamic in a positive way, right? If the proper boundaries are there. So, I think that you are looking at it from the right perspective there, right? That partnership, I think, is really key to the overall success of where you want to go and what you're doing right now. I want to back up for 1 second on the deal. Selfishly, I'm curious, but also I'm a numbers guy. So I want to bug you for a couple more numbers on that deal that we were talking about. If you can give me a little more context there, I'm super curious. So I know that the agreed upon price, I think you said, was 160,000. What was your money into the deal in terms of, how much did you have to spend? And then I was going to ask you how it went on the selling side in terms of, how many days on market. It sounds like it was 0, right? Because you never had to take it to market. But what
Yeah.
did it ultimately also sell for? So I'm curious what the net profit to you in the end was as well, using that strategy.
So that one, that one was a blessing, really. I really didn't put much into it. It was so quick. And I went back and looked after it closed. From the time I got the lead, I went to the house the next day. And from the time of closing, it was less than 5 weeks. And so, that's basically, I mean, it's a little more, but what they were telling me, about the other offers they were getting cash, because it really wasn't an investor's deal. It needed to go retail. They got, 15 to 20,000 more, just by going with me in this route. And, I got,
No, man, ring the bell on that.
it was awesome to not. So that one, I really, cleaning maybe, but it was so quick. We didn't really touch the inside of it. It was almost like a wholesale deal, but they just got so much more money. Like, it was so quick. Were you saying you wanted to know how much I sold it for?
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost.
Yeah. If you don't mind sharing, right? Like, how did it actually go?
Yeah. So
Numbers.
I had an agreement 160 with them. And that's, when I'm pitching that and I'm telling them I'm going to market them, I always make sure they know there's no fees or anything like that. So their number's set in stone, right? That one, if it were to go on the market, it had like some really old carpet. We were probably going to fix that up and maybe, touch up some things here and there. It was in good shape. I was going to list it for 189 or 194. I didn't have time to even pick a number yet. And that 1031 buyer said they would give us 175 3 days. So I gave my agent a little bit of that, of course, and then kept the rest. It was so quick, so easy. It was, a blessing, really. This is a cash business. And so I could have looked at it, well, I think I want to try the market and put a little money into it and really see what I can get. But when somebody says, I'll give you this much in 3 days, I really couldn't say no to that.
Yeah. Well, everything's opportunity cost. And, Joel and I talked about this a lot. We see a lot of people still trying to squeeze a few extra pennies out, and it is a tough market. So, I mean, if you could make a good profit in a very short amount of time, like Joel did, ring the bell, take it, take the profit. So awesome job, man.
Yeah. Well, how much did you make, man? I got to know. What's the
I made
number?
12 on my deal.
Okay, nice. Love
In
it.
5 weeks.
12,000, 5 weeks. And
Nice.
yeah.
Cool, man. And what was the agreed? So 175 sell. What was the agreed upon price for the seller? The set in stone.
160.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
I agreed them 160. And so I gave the agent 3,000, just for bringing that person. We didn't have to do
Everybody
anything.
wins.
Everybody wins. Yeah. We didn't even get to take pictures or do anything. It was so quick. It was really, I wish every deal could be like that one.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah. Full disclosure, not every deal is like that, but
Yeah.
when you can connect on a deal like that, that's fantastic. Cool. Okay.
I mean,
Listen, so here's something I want to get into with Novation. It's like a regular contract though, right? So are you still putting down earnest money?
So, yes and no. I'd put down a little bit, but really, since I'm pitching that it's a partnership, with them, I'm not going to do 3 to 5% and stuff like that, since we're in this together, if and stuff like that. So
Yeah, because you're
it's a
framing it like a
regular,
partnership. I get that. Yeah.
it's really a regular contract. The only thing different is it's called like an attorney in fact, I believe. And so basically, they are agreeing for you to share the address, market it, sign offers, once you get them from the MLS. That's really the only thing that's typically different on it.
Okay. Got it. I've got one more question. And this is like a big one for me that I've always thought about. And also I've never done innovation. So this is why I'm curious as well. When it comes to liability, so you're doing so right now your bread and butter is more of like, the lighter projects that don't require a ton of work. But if you were going to get into a bigger project or even have to spend $5,000-$10,000 for example, what kind of liability or exposure is there if say like there's a contractor in there swinging a hammer and then the homeowner steps on a nail or something like that? You know what I mean? Like what kind of
Yeah.
liability is there?
I haven't really got to that problem yet. So I'm not, when I think about it is people ask like, what happens if you put all that money in it and then it doesn't sell in the time frame and they want to back out?
Mhm.
Really, I haven't got to that either. I would think, I think being honest with them goes a long way. Really tell them what you're doing, how it's going to be, because I mean, yeah, you wouldn't want to fix it up and then have them back out, right? For if it sits a little while.
Yeah,
And
because
so
then
I think
your money's at risk, right? Is that what you're
right,
saying?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think being honest with them on that part.
There's got to be something that's written into the contract though,
Right.
because
Yeah, it's
otherwise people wouldn't be doing it.
right.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something that says, if I put, if I fix it up, if I do any repairs, you cannot just up and back out, because there is a set close date, and typically people put them like 60 to 75 days out on the contract, just for worst case scenario. It's never that long, but so I've never gone over that, and that might be a discussion. You've really got to know your numbers, because you want it to sell quick. You don't want it to sit on the market. And so you've really got to, look at what's selling, days on market and stuff like that. Because there is still a close date on the contract that, if it didn't close by that, then maybe, they would be allowed to have that discussion with you about potentially backing out.
Well, and pricing it right and, not like getting too greedy, especially right now in the market. Like you said, well, take the 175. That's a really good call. You don't want to go too high
Yeah.
and then it stalls out. I think that's it.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I'm curious now, you've got a couple of these under your belt, and what would you tell yourself now before you got started? What's one thing that you learned along the way that you wish you would have known before you started doing this?
I think I would tell myself,
It doesn't have to be about Novations. It could be about just real estate in general.
real estate in general, don't be afraid. A lot of how I've got some of these novations is I come first with the cash offer. And sometimes I would, to answer your question, I would say don't be afraid to be a little greedy on that. Don't be afraid to lower that number. That way your novation number sounds so much better, almost like you're doing them a favor. Yeah. Don't be afraid to have hard conversations with sellers. That would be a big one.
Yeah.
It takes a lot
I
of
think that's
guts
a
to
good
anchor
call.
low, is what you're saying. It takes a lot of guts to anchor low, but you have to be able
Right.
to anchor low on a price to be able to deliver if that's
Exactly.
truly what they're looking for. Because if you offer them an unrealistic price and say, hey, Mr. Seller, I could give you $200,000, but if realistically, I wouldn't be able to get this done at this price, right? So you have to be able to anchor low to make sure it is a win-win. And anchoring low can be intimidating and scary in the beginning. So I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another thing, I've got the flip in Stillwater right now, and I would say don't wait until closing to try to get things scheduled, which I kind of did. If going on my next flip, I would, have to try to have things, like junk removal guys or just, whatever the first step is, the next day of closing, have that lined up and ready to go. That way you're not waiting a few days to get started.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, every day counts. Every day's precious, right? So being able to capitalize on that is huge. So I think that's great advice. So if you have never done a deal before, right, have those ducks in a row. Don't procrastinate. It's going to really pay off in the long run for you. Well, thanks for sharing that, Tyler. Also, thanks for coming on and just sharing about sort of your mindset in terms of how you are creative in presenting those options like Joel was talking about. And I think that when you come in with not just presenting options, but also like we talked about earlier with a partnership attitude and that kind of being your heart in how to really help these people, I think that that's really going to shine through, right, and lead to more success for you. So awesome job, man. So as we kind of round out today, if people want to connect with you, learn more about your process, or maybe even bring you a deal, what are some ways for, social media or whatever that folks can contact you or connect with you?
Yeah, really, really through Facebook. I think, it's funny. Before I got into real estate, I never used Facebook, but that's where everybody's at, that's where everybody's at, all the groups. And so
Yep.
I would say just Facebook. It's, my name, Tyler Overholt. Send me a deal, Tulsa Metro, I'm buying. If it's anywhere else, I probably know somebody that is. So that's what I would say.
Tyler does joint ventures too. So if you're interested in joint ventures, bring him a deal for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. And we'll leave that information in the show notes as well. Tyler, thank you so much for coming on, man. Really, really appreciate it. And we'll catch everybody on the next episode.
Thank you guys for having me.
Cool, man. Thanks.
Sweet.